Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, Protecting Your Data Against Ransomware, presented by ProVal Technologies. I am your host today, Alec Herman. I am the Partner Development Associate at ProVal Technologies. And on behalf of all ProVal Technologies, I just want to thank you all for joining us today and attending our webinar. I am joined by two fantastic individuals. First off, Joe Turso, Service Delivery Manager at ProVal Technologies. Joe, do you mind giving a brief background about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alec. I have over 30 years in the technology industry, starting with the military and aerospace industry, and then transitioning to the small and mid-market client consulting since 2002. Since 2004, I have been hands-on in the management of MSPs from a NOC, Centralized Services, project and service delivery, as well as VCIO roles.
Thank you, Joe. Secondly, we're also joined today by Chris Mitchell, our Managed Services Consultant. Chris, like Joe, do you mind just providing a brief history of your background?
Yeah, sure, Alec. So I started off as a field technician about 15 years ago. After that, I progressed into project management role, and then into service delivery role. Overseeing our entire service department. Through that time, we was part of implementing an Automate solution, and really enjoy working on that. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the last few years, is really concentrating on that efficiency and what these systems can do for you guys.
Great, thank you for that, Chris. So just a couple of notes before we get started here. One, if you do have any questions during the presentation, please input them in the Q&A section on this forum. We do have a dedicated section at the end of the webinar to address all of these questions. Secondly, we will be posting this video in the next coming days to our YouTube channel, ProVal Technologies YouTube channel. So if you're looking to share it or just rewatch it, that's where it'll be living. Great. So just to start off, I want to give a brief history about ProVal Technologies. We were founded in 2008, headquartered in Orlando, Florida, and supported by NOC in New Delhi, India. We are 60+ employees strong over the two locations, and have hundreds of thousands of computers under our management. We are an MSP consulting firm that really specializes and focuses on the NOC or centralized services portion of the MSP. More specifically, we optimize and administer backend tools such as RMMs, backups, AV, monitoring, and patching. With that history, I am now going to turn it over to Joe and to get us started on how to protect your data against ransomware.
All right, let's get this party started. And by now, every MSP is familiar with ransomware. And to simplify it down to its core, ransomware is a hold of somebody's data and systems in an encrypted state so it can't be accessed without paying some money. And by someone, I mean it's either you, the MSP, or your clients, or their insurance company. And last I checked, ransomware is not $3.50. Knowing about ransomware is not enough. MSPs must actively protect themselves and their clients. This new ransomware, and new being a relative term, is specifically targeting MSPs. A bad actor can breach one and have impact to many clients. Since 2016, Homeland Security and the FBI has repeatedly warned MSPs and their technology platform providers to safeguard against these attacks. Ransomware stops businesses. It impacts the MSP from a labor and relationship standpoint. It can cause hours, days, sometimes weeks and months of frustration and downtime. It has caused MSPs to go out of business. There are common practices based on the NIST Framework 1.1 and the SIS-20 controls that can reduce the exposures MSPs face, as well as strengthen their client security posture. Remember, hope is not a plan. You must be vigilant in ransomware prevention, detection, and remediation. All right, so now for the disturbing slide. According to Sophos, who commissioned a survey of over 5,000 IT decision makers across 26 countries earlier this year, 51% of those organizations, and for those of you who want to keep track of this, that is over half, had experienced some form of ransomware within the past year. What's even worse, of those attacks, 72% were successful. Again, for the calculator-dependent attendees, that is 1,836 impacted companies. Now, these are not MSPs specifically, however, the number is still alarming. And I'm going to touch on cybersecurity insurance for a second or two. When a company is impacted by ransomware, they are most likely going to make an insurance claim to recover lost monies due to their production. 1 out of every 5 companies have major holes in their cybersecurity insurance. 84% of the companies do have cybersecurity, but only 64% of their policies cover ransomware. There is a difference in theft and social engineering coverage when it comes to ransomware. Know your protection and know what's covered and what's not. And the reality of ransomware is either you, your client, or the insurance company can pay the ransom, or you can restore the data. It all comes down to being prepared. The average ransom payment amount increased by 104% in Q4 of last year. In that time period, the average ransomware demand increased to $84,116, according to Coveware. Ransomware is big business, and people are making money at it. But there is some good news. According to another survey done by Veeam, 84% of their customers that followed the best practices for backups were able to recover their data. And that sounds a whole lot better than taking your Audi A8 money and using it to pay ransomware to some bad actor. All right, we're going to tackle ransomware in 3 areas. In the SIS 27.1 model, the first 6 of the 20 controls all focus on identity and access monitoring and management. It leverages the principle of least privilege. It requires analysis of data. These are items a typical MSP should follow and a typical MSP customer expects for cybersecurity. This is very important for an MSP who has the keys to so many kingdoms to be aware of and to adhere to. MSPs have a virtual cornucopia of tools to support their mission. PSA, RMM, shared documentation, cloud AV, private cloud backups, and the list goes on. Securing the access, continual monitoring, and the auditing the use of those tools is a major undertaking just of itself. We should automate the user, if only we could. In the forefront of ransomware attacks is the end user. Whether the end user is in the MSP's organization or their client's company, people are under constant bombardments of threats, email, malicious websites, phishing, vishing, and more. As an MSP, the user is your most valued asset. They need protection, if only for themselves. And back to a statement I made earlier. Hope is not a plan. Things will go wrong. It is how you respond to ransomware, breaches, and malicious activity that makes the difference between having a client go out of business and having them love you like they're your favorite uncle and you have candy in your pocket. Think, plan, test, and document. All right, we'll start by protecting the MSP. Keeping threats out of your environment is step 1. Leverage a deny all approach standard for access and edge devices and know when those standards have been altered. Review and revisit all port forwarding rules to eliminate any non-essential open ports. Where possible, use a VPN to access resources on internal network from outside rather than port forwarding. And I know this is still in practice because I've seen it 1,000 times. Specifically, do not allow RDP port 3389 open on your firewall. Remember, ransomware cannot get in and spread if you block it. Apply a suitable IPS protection to rule and govern traffic to and from any Windows host on your network, and limit the source traffic to only known IPs when you can. You can protect against threats moving laterally on your network by considering segmenting your network into LANs or smaller subnets, being VLANs. And you can assign those separate zones securely through your firewall. Once you do that, you can apply suitable IPS policies to rule the governing traffic traversing these zones to prevent worms and bots from spreading between LAN segments. Probe and monitor your network. Leverage alerting to know when someone has brought a new device online. Every new device is a threat until it is not. Prevent any device from gaining access to your network resources until it has been verified clean. Is it patched? Does it have AV? Is it a company-controlled resource? We'll go back to the principle of least privilege. Monitor elevated group memberships. Changes that occur outside of the approved process should generate tickets and should be addressed as a threat. Separate access and IDs based on the role of what they're trying to accomplish. This is especially true for MSPs. Your Microsoft 365 account should be for you to perform your daily functions like email. Create a separate and unique account for global admin, for backups, billing, and this holds true for every tool and service. Separate your tools from your business networks and logons. Yes, I know it's annoying and time-consuming to have multiple accounts and logons, but you only need to have ransomware impact your client one time to have freedom from logons. Lock down your source and destination IPs for remote access and backups. This helps restrict access and greatly limits exposures. And of course, leverage MFA everywhere. Multi-factor authentication is no longer optional for an MSP. It should be enabled for every app, access, and login. Make sure you are using complex passwords and take advantage of complex password generators. Most MSP tools have these built in for your convenience. Leverage physical devices such as smartphones, fobs, security tokens, badges as a second layer of security. And as a third layer, try leveraging biometrics such as Windows Hello for Business for facial recognition. In addition, most modern laptops have built-in fingerprint scanners that can be integrated with your Active Directory. And by the same token, just because an application asks for elevated permission does not mean you should allow it. Find out which folder, file, or registry key it needs and only grant access to this. If not, try and sandbox the application via virtualization or other means. Ransomware can only spread to areas it has been given rights to spread to. All too often, it's poor programming or lazy engineering that is creating these vulnerabilities that get exploited. The last topic I'm going to focus on here is patching. Core patching via your RMM should be consistent across all of your resources. And when patching fails, it needs to be addressed in a timely manner. Critical updates in general address vulnerabilities identified by the manufacturers or bad actors themselves and need to be installed to protect those resources. If you are not patching your servers, applications, and workstations, please give yourself 6 demerits for the day and go take a lap. Patching is one of the biggest issues addressed with cloud services, but it does not mitigate all ransomware threats. This conversation will continue in a slide or two. All right. Continual education on security is one of the best methods of ransomware prevention. Not all security awareness training is the same. More frequent or in-depth training should be delivered for executives, finance personnel, HR staff, your MSP technicians. Along with MSPs, these groups are being targeted by ransomware bots and beings. And education is not set and forget scenario. You must reinforce and re-educate end users on the importance of security, policies, and tools. People, especially engineers, gets desensitized to threats over time and relax their security posture. Continual education, the gamification of training, and the variation of topics help keep security top of mind. If you have corporate-owned mobile devices, they should be managed just like a PC or a server. You should know when apps are being installed or removed and respond accordingly based on your policies. Mobile ransomware is a form of malware that affects mobile devices. A cyber criminal can use the mobileware to steal sensitive data from the smartphone or lock the device before demanding payment to return the data to the user or unlock the device. Using third-party services to manage mobile devices adds an additional layer of protection against ransomware by preventing these configuration change. Help the client convert their HR policies into existing environmental standards. Workstation locking after 2 minutes of inactivity, or password changes every so often with no reuse of passwords for 5 times, or this user can't log in remotely between these hours, or you're going to disable the use of USB drives. The controls available to secure the end user environment is a major shield in the prevention of ransomware. Use the tools available, from application whitelisting to this email came from outside the organization banners, because policies inform and control and help protect the end user by protecting the environment. Securing the desktop also helps with providing a consistent end user experience across multiple devices. Their desktop and RDS and mobile phone kiosks are consistent. It will reduce support calls and increase their productivity. Your RMM tool is a major factor not only in implementing these standards for the client consistently, it can alert when these changes are detected. This level of integration between the client and the technology helps foster the relationship of the MSP. All right, here's the plan. Step 1, implement all the standards, best practice, and training. Step 2, throw it out because there's a breach. As technology evolves, business changes, and new is introduced, businesses must have a solid business continuity and disaster recovery plan. As COVID has taught us, disasters are bound to happen, and when they do, they can cripple entire infrastructures, facilities, and communities. Disaster recovery refers to a plan designed to restore systems and data in the event they are compromised. While backup process is one of the most important elements, DR planning reaches well beyond making copies of your data. A DR plan outlines how often you back up, where the copies are replicated, where they are stored, and your selection of recovery destinations. These components and many others all go into a comprehensive disaster recovery plan. But the businesses must continue. From natural disasters to mishaps by the clients themselves, numerous events can threaten an organization's very existence, or at the very least, cause major disruptions and excessive downtime. Again, COVID has taught us that these disruptions can and will occur. Business continuity planning focuses on designing strategies that keep businesses' operations going. Business continuity planning process is far more granular by comparison to a DR plan. Its extensive detail can be seen in its dependence on redundancy, from servers, storage, and networking equipment to staff, connectivity providers, and phone servers. Everything that could possibly disrupt the business flow must be stacked in reserves. And keep in mind, backups are not bulletproof. You must test, monitor, and validate. Test your local backups and monitor success or failures. An MSP should know when a client's RPO and RTO will be exceeded. Plan and execute a real disaster recovery and business continuity test with your clients. Make sure your plan and your client's expectations are realistic. Identify the stakeholders and what are the roles. Identify what needs to be restored and in what order. What are the recovery point objectives? What are the recovery time objectives? And please go beyond I just got the server started up. Have them test their line of business apps. Can they log in? Can they access their data? Can they be functional in a DR or BC environment? Use separate accounts. Do not allow backup accounts to log into devices, and keep the client backups off client domains, so a compromise of the client's accounts are less likely to infect your backups. The 3-2-1 backup rule is a good recommended starting point in building any data protection system. It's a way to protect your data from loss and corruption and to control risk in all situations. Being well prepared in advance is the best data policy protection. There's hardly anything perfect in the world, but the 3-2-1 approach is the best practice recommended by information security professionals as well as government authorities such as the US CERT team. Most modern backup technologies such as Veeam, Datto, StorageCraft, and Unitrends support the 3-2-1 approach. Remember, if a client is impacted by ransomware, having the ability to recover quickly and completely is why they outsource to the MSP. All right. Core to an MSP is their centralized services. The centralized services is the suite of tools and services required to manage, monitor, and automate your business and your clients. If you're using Kaseya or Automate just to push your remote access or AV tool, then you're missing out on so many opportunities to stop ransomware and to reduce the support tickets. Make sure you're using your tools to detect unauthorized changes in the environment. Enable syslog and SNMP monitors. Secure SNMP monitors. Push PowerShell scripts to see who doesn't have MFA enabled in Microsoft 365. See who is a member of the finance shares. Your possibilities are endless. At a minimum, push patches. Ransomware cannot exploit a vulnerability that does not exist. And do not ignore non-Windows devices. Keep your switches, firewalls, and other non-Windows devices up to date and monitor those core services using your tools. And oh, how I wish criminals followed union rules. An MSP can never rest. The landscape is always changing and evolving. We must continually adapt to new threats and the demands of a connected workplace. I can only imagine the MSP who has to pick up the phone and to tell the customer that they have been breached and the MSP was the source of the breach. MSP should set the standards for securities for not only their clients, but their community. It's the old adage of the shoemaker whose kids ran around barefooted because he always put his clients first. Just like on an airplane, remember, in the event of emergency, you need to put on your oxygen mask first. You cannot help anybody if you are the one being impacted. Secure your environment like you are your own client. Test your backups and your DR plan. Then be confident in your approach to clients. And that's kind of all I have to say about that.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Woo, that was a lot of information right there. Good stuff. Look, guys, the stuff that Joe went through does take a level of expertise and definitely a good bit of time. If you don't have that, please do not hesitate to reach out to us here at ProVal Technologies. We partner with MSPs across the world to make sure that their tools are secure and optimized. With that, I would like to get into the questions portion of this presentation. If you have any questions, please input them in the Q&A section on this forum. All right, looks like we have our first question here. How do I know when a new device has been added to the network?
Yeah, it's a good question. Generally speaking, you would enable a probe function on your RMM. Assuming it has one built in. There's other third-party network monitoring tools out there that can assist in that, something like Alec. You know, using a managed switch, Ubiquiti or Dell or a Meraki switch in managed mode can kind of give you that single pane of glass and let you know what's going on in your network. Turn off ports that aren't in use. You know, certainly VLAN off that wireless and your other important LAN services. You know, really just kind of control what's there, or at least what you're expecting to be there. You know, all are steps in the right direction.
Great, thank you, Chris. We did have another question come in. Should the MSP provide security awareness training?
You know, there's lots of options out there. You know, as an MSP, what is your core business? You know, what do you specialize in? You know, certainly, if it's not your strong suit, you know, there's some turnkey solutions out there. KnowBe4 is one company, but you should kind of specialize in what your core competencies are. You know, the clients outsource to you to manage their IT for one reason. You know, if you're not comfortable in that education space or providing that level of service, then I would look to other services to provide that for you.
Great, thank you, Chris. Another question here. How frequently should the backups be tested? What's the recommended practice?
Again, part of that revolves around on what your agreements are with your clients. You know, I've seen people that are testing them once a month. You know, once a quarter is probably adequate for most companies. I've seen people that are doing them once a year or never. So it runs all sorts of gamuts. But I'd say once a quarter is really a good place to start if you're not doing it today.
And then what is the difference in RTO and RPO?
Yeah, so RTO, or recovery time objective, is really how fast or priority order each service or application should be restored. So let's say you have a CRM tool and an accounting package. You know, which one does the company need first in order to keep working or get back to a level of service that's adequate for them? You know, is it that CRM or is the accounting package more important? Recovery point objective is how far back do we need to be able to restore to? You know, is 1 day? Is it 3 days? Is it a month? You know, how far back or how recently do we need to go back to? You know, is it an hourly thing? Is losing an hour's worth of data going to be very detrimental? You know, every product out there, every client out there is going to be different. So it's understanding those and having them documented and revisiting that documentation. You know, the clients will change software, they'll change how they operate, they'll change a lot of things. So revisiting that on a regular basis with those clients is important. Last thing you want to do is have something happen and a client go down and you're relying on documentation that was put in 5 years ago when you onboarded them. You know, odds are something's changed and you may be going down the wrong direction.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. Do we have any more questions from the audience? I believe we just got to the last one. Oh, just have one more flow in here. How do we determine what all the things are that we need to monitor? You know,
one of the best ways is to leverage, you know, those standards that are out there. You know, NIST has a good cyber framework up there. You know, I'll put some links in the comment section here in a minute. You know, another one, those SIS-20 controls really have good published lists that are out there. Subscribing to peer groups, you know, seeing what your peers are doing that are in the similar space is another good area to reference. You know, some things that some companies are doing may fit very well with what you need. Some things may be more to an extreme than what you need for your clients. So talking to your peers and seeing what the national standards are that are out there will really get you going in the right direction.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
No problem.
Any more questions?
I do want to tag on to something Chris had said with the how to monitor things. Remember, it's all about acceptable security risk. There are things that will be out there as a standards that it may not work for your customer because of the way they do business or how they do business. As long as they're aware of the security risk and you can mitigate what happens if it is breached, it's okay not to follow all these standards because it can be costly. So work it out with your client and work it out that you say, if these are the security holes that I have, how do I mitigate them? It's all about planning.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you for that insight there, Joe. Okay, well, we didn't have any other questions trickle through, so we're gonna wrap up here. Just as a reminder, this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel. If you just look at our channel on YouTube, Proval Technologies, that's exactly where you'll be able to find this. Additionally, if you are looking for any kind of support or outsourced tool management, please don't hesitate to give a call. We do work with many MSPs across the world and have a lot of expertise in these areas. My contact information is located on this slide, so please feel free to reach out. Thanks again for everybody for joining the webinar, Protecting Your Data Against Ransomware, and we hope you guys have a great rest of your day.